Is an African safari on your travel to-do list? Today we're heading into the heart of Africa with Christy Fitzharris, African safari specialist and founder of Wheels Up Travel and Cruise. Christy has just returned from an incredible journey through Kenya and Uganda with the legendary luxury tour operator Abercrombie and Kent. If you enjoy the journey with us today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if this video's got you inspired, drop a comment and join the conversation. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for being part of our travel community, whether you're a longtime fan or just dropping by. We really appreciate it. And now, on with the show. Hi, Christy. Welcome back to RTE Travel Talk.
Hi, Ken. Good to be here again.
Great to have you with us. I've really been looking forward to this, Christy, because I know you're just back from Africa, and that has to be one of the most fabulous adventures that Deborah and I ever were on. So I'm really anxious to hear what you have to say about it and tell us all about your trip to Africa with, I believe it was Abercrombie and Kent?
Yes, it was.
So why don't you give us start with like a 30,000 foot level look at what you did and where you went.
So I spent 8 days between Kenya and Uganda. In Kenya, I visited 3 properties. One was just kind of an overnight stop in Nairobi to adjust to the time change and then prep for the move deeper into the bush of Kenya. Once we left Nairobi, we moved on to Old Pejeta Conservancy, where we stayed at a beautiful bush camp. And then we moved on to the Mara, where we stayed in a little bit more of a formalized, solid lodge right on the Mara River with hippos bathing in the water right in front of us. It was beautiful. And then we moved on to Uganda, where we had an unbelievable gorilla trekking experience.
Oh, fantastic. So tell us about some of the special moments that you came across.
I can't say enough about every moment of this trip. From touching down and being greeted by somebody from A&K who made the airport arrival experience incredibly easy for us in what could have been a very overwhelming airport situation, all the way through to when I was tapped on the stomach by a mountain gorilla in Uganda. We got to take hot air balloon flights. We had lunch in the bush. We had sundowners in the bush. So many wonderful experiences. Every single moment was something I will never forget. The whole thing was beautiful.
Christy, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, how does a typical day unfold?
So a very typical day would be to wake up around sunrise. We were greeted in the morning, if we wanted it, with hot coffee or hot chocolate and cookies delivered to our room. We would get ready, a quick run over to breakfast, and then head out on our first morning game drive, usually around 8 a.m. And now this is not generally the schedule if you are in South Africa, but in East Africa, we were able to have a little bit slower start to our day. So around 8, we would head out on our first game drive. Then in the afternoon, come back for a great lunch, maybe a massage or a dip in the pool at our second stop. They had a beautiful pool. And then go out on another game drive. At our first stop, we had the opportunity to take a couple special experiences. Like in the morning, we were able to take a hot air balloon ride over the Mara. And then in the afternoon, there were a couple other experiences available to us, like visiting one of Jane Goodall's chimp sanctuaries, or going to see the last 2 remaining northern white rhinos on Earth and hear what's being done to maybe repopulate that species. So
that's much the same as what we had. Thinking back, I think kind of the difference, a lot of our days started before the sun came up. So you got a really, really early start, and it was just beautiful. Getting out there on the beginning of a game drive or in the balloon ride and watching the sun come up was just tremendous.
Absolutely. Some of my favorite moments of every single day were taking that hot chocolate or coffee out onto my balcony and just sitting there and soaking it in. Whether I was looking over the plains in one camp or looking onto the Mara River, it was just a really beautiful way to wake up every morning.
So your balloon ride was in Masai Mara?
Yes, it was.
Did it start early in the day? It must have.
It did start earlier in the day. Our wake up that day was at about 4 a.m. And we were driven about 30 minutes to the launch site for where they would send us off on the balloons. There were 3 balloons prepping to take off. And so that was really great to be able to see other balloons in the air at the same time as us, because of course you can't get your own picture. They had hot coffee, cookies, hot chocolate waiting for us there because it was a little chilly that morning. And then about 45 minutes later, we were all in the balloon. We stayed in our balloon at about 200 feet, which I really enjoyed because it allowed us perfect close up, in and out of the trees views of the animals below.
I was absolutely amazed with our balloon ride because the fact that they can actually fly these things up and down. Like he would dip down into a river and then he'd rise up again, just clearing the trees. Oh, it was fantastic.
we may have landed with some shrubbery attached to our basket.
Yeah. If it's anything like ours, it's kind of like a controlled crash, and they give you plenty of warning, but it was a lot of fun.
Yes.
And the other thing that I found about it was just the absolute quiet.
Mhm.
All you can hear is the sound of him working the propane burner to reinflate and move the balloon around. It was unreal.
That is one of the highlights of the trip, is just the peace and awe that I felt in that balloon basket.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of hard to describe, isn't it, really, unless you've actually been there. I've had people say it's like a life-changing experience, just how different it really is. It's amazing. So tell us about some of your game drives.
So the game drives from day to day were pretty well varied. The guides knew what we had seen the day prior or what the interests of our group were. And so they would try to hunt out specific animals for us if we had not, for example, seen a leopard, which remained elusive for the entire trip. The leopards in East Africa are not as habituated as the ones in Southern Africa. And so that's the only one of the big five that we did not see. But what we did see was just incredible. We saw huge alligators near the river, hippos, so many hippos. And I wish right now that I could remember what a herd of hippos was called, but hundreds of hippos. And the noises they make are just hilarious.
Yeah.
So many herds of elephant, zebra. That's another thing about East Africa is when you see animals, you're likely going to see tens or even hundreds of them just because the plains are so wide open. It really allows for that kind of viewing. And it was constant. There was no real dry moment in any of the game drive unless we were looking for lions. Then sometimes there would be a few moments where for a few minutes we wouldn't see any animals, but other than that it would be elephants over here, hey, oh, zebras over there.
It's just amazing the amount of animals out there. You've probably seen a wildebeest or two, right?
Just a few, yes. Yes, hundreds. And something that really surprised me that I became fascinated by on this safari was the birds. I don't pay too much attention to birds here in the United States, but the birds in Kenya were stunningly beautiful, multicolored, extremely brightly colored, and there were just so many varieties that also became a new passion of mine.
So speaking of big cats, did you experience a lot of them?
A lot of lions, one solo cheetah who was lounging on a small hilltop and just taking care of herself, but a lot of lions, baby lions, mama lions, the big daddy lion. They're just remarkable.
But how about up close and personal? I know when we were there, our guide was so excellent. He knew where they were headed. So he drove like a madman to get ahead of them and just at the bottom of this hill. And then sure enough, they came walking over this hill.
Yes, we had.
And they just walk right past you, like you could reach out and touch them almost. They don't recommend that.
Yeah, we had several up close experiences. So in Kenya, we were visiting two different parks, and the experience at Olpejita, which is a private conservancy, versus where we were in the Mara. While we were at Olpejita, the guide could get us extremely close to these animals, and being private, there were a lot fewer trucks on the roads. And so if we had an opportunity to view a lion, a lot of times we were the only vehicle there within feet of a mother and her cubs, or just cubs, or a whole pride walking through the bush. Once we moved over to the Mara, the guides were all kind of radioed into each other. And so there was one day where we saw in the entire pride just lounging after a feast. They were within feet of zebra, just not interested in the zebra at all. They had just had their meal. And so we got to see the entire family napping in the afternoon with the cubs in a bush and the moms looking over them. And then on the other side of the road, what looked like teenagers just stretched out on their backs, maybe getting some sun while they're sleeping.
It's just absolutely amazing. This was in Kenya for the most part when you saw that. So how does the safari experience differ between Kenya and Uganda?
So while you can have a traditional safari experience in Uganda, that is not traditionally where people would go to have a big five safari game drive experience. In Uganda, we went there specifically to trek the mountain gorillas, and we stayed for 2 nights. We did one hike in to see the gorillas, and that was the focus of our time there.
So tell us about Abercrombie and Kent. They're obviously, when it comes to African safaris, they're excellent at it, and they're probably more higher end. Tell us a little bit about how you found them.
I found the service and the experience to be top-notch across the board. There's a couple of myths, though, about safari pricing, especially, that I want to clarify. And with Abercrombie and Kent, they make this very easy. You can spend as much as you want on a safari through a totally customized experience. Every detail is tailored to you. Or you can spend $6,000 to $7,000 per person on a group departure. And really, when you're in these lodges and you're going on these game drives, in many cases you're kind of part of a group anyway, because the lodges are so small. You begin to feel part of a group just because
No.
you're closely interacting with 10, 20 other people that you're going to see over and over, just because of the kind of rhythm of the day.
Yep.
Abercrombie and Kent made every part of this experience seamless and easy, from never having to touch our luggage, to doing our laundry, to putting us through the VIP or diplomat processing at every single airport we encountered. One of the feelings that I had overwhelmingly through this entire process was wanting to do more for the people who lived there and who impacted my stay, and to pay them back, because it was really just so beautiful, and to help the community. And that is something that Abercrombie and Kent does constantly through building of schools, supporting lunch programs. Here, I can even show you. They supply these clean water,
Okay.
LifeStroke
Yeah.
filters
Yeah.
to schools and local organizations. And part of your money that you pay to Abercrombie and Kent is going to help these projects. And you can do more if you like, but it's already being done. I felt pretty good knowing it was happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. When we're kind of comparing these safaris, like
Mhm.
for example, the price per person for Abercrombie and Kent, how much approximately was that?
You can start at around $7,000 or $8,000 per person
Okay.
with a beautiful 4.5 star experience, and go up to the sky is the limit. There are several ways to reserve safaris through Abercrombie and Kent, and really they are something for just about every price range.
And it's really worthwhile, if you're thinking about doing something like this, to have the services of an expert travel advisor to go along with it, because there's what we found, there's just so many little quirks, intricacies, that if you're trying to do it on your own can be easily overlooked. That really becomes worthwhile. Plus, $7,000 to $8,000 a person. Well, that might seem expensive, but I'm sure at that price there, what a lot of people don't realize is just how large these countries are. You can probably find safaris out there that could be $2,500 or $3,000 per person. The difference is that I've seen is that you have in-country flights with Abercrombie and Kent, which you did, I'm sure, right?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, that's included
Yes.
at $2,500 or $3,000 per person on some of the more economy safaris. You're driving between these places, and it can be a long, long way. So you spend a lot of time getting from one place to the other, and less time with the most important part of the safari, and that's your actual safari, where you get to interact with the wildlife and the people in the lodges.
100%. And just due to the travel time that it takes to get to some of these countries, all of these countries actually on the entire continent,
Yep.
you want to maximize the amount of time that you're actually on the ground. Going along with what you mentioned about the pricing, a lot of people don't realize that once you're on a safari of this level, you do not have to take out your wallet again. Maybe a little bit of tipping here and there,
Yep.
but you're not paying for meals, you're not paying for beverages, you're not paying individually for game drives. Every experience that you're going to have while you're on the ground, whether it's a balloon ride, a special interaction with rhinos, the gorilla experience, that's all been prepaid, including all the way down to meals and your laundry and your luggage handling. And so while that is a lot of money, it's all included. It's right there.
Yeah, it's all packaged. And,
Mhm.
really, it's not that much different than a high scale luxury cruise,
Exactly.
but really at the end of the day, it's all what you can afford in your budget. Tell me a little bit more about the lodges. I mean, some of the lodges that we stayed in, Christy, were just amazing.
Our first night was at the Fairmont Nairobi. That's a
Hmm.
beautiful virtuoso 5 star property.
Yep.
Then we moved on to the Old Pejeta Conservancy, and we stayed at Sanctuary Tamborare. That's a tented camp. It's a permanent tented camp.
Yep.
It doesn't move with the Great Migration. It was the most beautiful tent I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard sided, but it did have hard structures inside. So
Yep.
a wood floor and a separation between the bedroom and the bathroom. I had a rainfall, beautiful shower that almost made me feel like I was showering outside.
Yep.
I could have had air conditioning. I had heat. It was a little chilly when we went. And so at each evening at turn down, they would turn on a heated mattress pad that was a part of the bedding. That was wonderful. And then very similar experience when we moved on to the Mara, we stayed at Sanctuary Olanana,
Yeah.
which is more of a lodge style experience. They had a pool, they had a larger dining area and a few more facilities, but still kind of the same thing. You're in your own kind of not cottage, but your own house, your own structure. It was incredibly spacious. I believe the room was about 1,500 square feet. I had my own beautiful balcony, living room, bedroom, bar, everything. Just beautiful.
So tell me, which of the two did you prefer? What you're relaying to me, it almost mirrors our experience. We had the kind of high-end glamping with Little Governor's Camp, and it was just
Okay. Mhm.
absolutely amazing. And
Mhm.
then when we went to Gorongora Crater, we stayed at the Gorongora Lodge, which had a main lodge, but then individual, almost like cottages, which
Mhm.
were, as you said, like about 1,500 square feet with their own balcony. And they're both amazing. They really,
Mhm.
really were. So which stood out for you? Which did you prefer?
I would absolutely always build a trip that involves both of them
Yeah.
because they're different
Oh,
experiences. I could
definitely.
hear the wildlife at night in the tented camp. I mean, I had a massage in my room at the second location. And so I would definitely build a trip that had a great mix of both of these experiences in it.
Yeah. No, exactly. And now, speaking of wildlife, in the tented camp, did you have wildlife come into the camp at nighttime?
We did not have wildlife come into the camp, but our dining area was situated to overlook the plains,
Yeah.
a watering hole
Yep.
in the plains. And we saw a herd of buffalo come take a wonderful afternoon bath one day during lunch. We saw elephants visit that area, zebra.
Yeah.
There was a lot
Yeah.
of great wildlife to
Like
view.
with Little Governor's Camp with us, it was right on a water hole,
Mhm.
and you never felt unsafe because they had guards everywhere, and at nighttime, if you were to walk somewhere, they walked with you. But we did have a hippo rummaging outside our tent one of the
Wow.
evenings. It was just amazing. But 2 o'clock in the morning, Deb's giving me the elbow. Get up, get up. And it's just like it's these kind of things, these kind of
Mhm.
experiences, and I'm sure you had lots as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't have an experience where any animals came into my tent, but I did have a very up close experience with a mountain gorilla during our hike
Yeah,
where the entire family were crossing a path in front of us. I happened to be on the path in the first position and a teenage female just walked by me and bopped me on the stomach. And that entire time we had been braced for what the silverback or the alpha male was thinking about our presence there,
right.
because if anything intimidating or interactive was going to happen, it would probably have come from him.
Yeah,
And so we were prepared for maybe a slightly aggressive reaction from
yeah,
him. And what we actually got was they're just playful and they're very well habituated and they just
amazing.
like to play too.
And again, that's the thing about Africa. Like you're
Hmm.
going to come away from one of these safaris with just so many wonderful memories.
Hmm.
So we went to Africa in September. What do you think is the best time of year for safari?
It's really subjective and
Yeah,
it depends a lot on what you can spend.
yeah,
Most people believe that the best time of year to go would be during the Great Migration, which would be late summer and early fall
yeah,
in East Africa. But I went in June and I was there the first week after the official end of the rainy season.
yeah.
I only encountered one afternoon light shower and I thought the weather was excellent. I never got too hot. I was never too cold. There were a lot of babies that were out and visible because they had just come through, the season where they were primarily giving birth. And I thought that was an excellent time to go. It's also a pretty moderately priced time to go.
Right, exactly. So it comes down to what you can fit into your budget. But
Right. And you don't have to go during the Great Migration to
no,
see all the animals. They're there year round.
exactly, exactly. That's the thing. People will look online and say, "Well, you should go at this time, you should go at that time." Well, at the end of the day, no matter what time of year you go, you're gonna
Mhm.
see all kinds of wildlife and all kinds of animals and have all kinds of experiences. You just are.
Yes. Yes. You could even have an enjoyable time, especially in Kenya, maybe during the rainy season. If that is what you can afford, go because you're covered every step of the way. You're in covered
Yeah.
vehicles in East Africa generally. You'll be protected from the rain. The only thing that I would not recommend of the experience that I went through or that I had during the rainy season would be to go to Uganda. Don't gorilla trek during the rainy season. That would be
No,
very
exactly. Because
uncomfortable and very difficult.
yeah, because you're actually hiking through the jungle to
Mhm.
experience this.
Mhm.
Yeah. How long were the hikes, by the way?
The hike to the gorillas
Mhm.
was about 2.5 hours to the gorillas and about 2.5 hours back out. And I believe that the hike that I went through was probably one of the most physically challenging versions of the hike that you can do. Now, there's easy hikes and very challenging hikes. You cannot exactly choose which one you're going to have
Okay.
just because you don't know where the gorillas are going to be.
Right.
But depending on where your camp is or your hotel is or lodge that you're staying in, and depending on which country you choose to begin your hike in, either Rwanda or Uganda, which is where all of this happens actually, you can kind of have an idea of the difficulty level that you're going to experience. Now, even though I had probably one of the most physically challenging experiences of my life, and I was in the military for 17 years,
Yeah.
I was in a group with two ladies who were 75, and they were carried on the shoulders of 12 locals all the way to the gorillas. For about $300, they were able to hire a team of porters that carried them in sedan chairs all the way to and all the way back from the gorilla viewing. And so there's a way to do this for everybody
Oh,
if it is
wow.
on
Yeah.
your bucket list.
So really, that hike would be strenuous for somebody that's in their seventies or so. But if you want to experience it, there's a way. That's fantastic.
And then also just based on the location and the lodges that you
Hmm.
choose, you can kind of, tone down the difficulty level or ramp it up as you wish.
Yeah. So, Christy, how do you, as a specialist, help match clients to the right type of safari when they come to you?
We'll start with either between a 30-minute and an hour-long phone call. I
Hmm.
really want to get to know what kind of experience you're looking for.
Yep.
Have you been watching movies where you see the Queen from The Crown have a very tented camp bush experience? Have you been watching Out of Africa? Have you been watching, what kind of nature documentaries have you been watching that has kind of shaped your idea of what your experience is supposed to look like?
Yep.
So we'll start with that, and then we'll talk about, are there any specific animals that you want to see? Because in South Africa, you might have a better chance of seeing a leopard, or there's a greater population of rhinos there. I want to talk about the level of accommodation that you're interested in and what other experiences you might want to have while you're on this trip. Do you want to have time at a beach? Do you want to go experience the winelands of South Africa, go to Table Mountain, go to Victoria Falls? We'll talk about the entire experience that you're interested in having. I'll spend that time getting to know you and trying to understand exactly what experience you've envisioned for yourself, and then build a experience tailored to that.
Fantastic. So, are there any common misconceptions you think that you might want to clear up when it comes to an African safari?
The number one misconception, I think, is that they're very highly priced. There's a safari for everybody. You can even self-drive yourself through some parks in South Africa, bringing the cost down considerably. I don't necessarily recommend that, but if that's what you're interested in, we can do that. The number one thing, though, back to pricing, is people don't realize what's included. Once you book your safari, everything is handled. For the most part, everything is taken care of. We can build something that's tailored to the level of luxury that you'd like to experience, but just know that you can have an incredible experience just like this for six, seven, eight, and higher $1,000. And I think that's a really great jumping off point when you're talking about 8 days with everything included.
No, exactly. So that's 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
Two people will call that $16,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got to get there. So
Yes.
you can probably wrap everything up for about 20K,
Yes,
20,000.
and that is a lot of money, but it is a life-changing experience. And I don't say things like that lightly, but this absolutely was a life-changing experience.
Yes, it's a lot of money, but again, the way I look at something like that, it's $20,000. Okay, well, maybe I don't go on a vacation this year, and I save up for a couple of years to do
Mhm.
something that I really, really, really want.
Mhm.
Because you're going to I can guarantee you're going to have 30 years of memories once you do it once.
Absolutely.
And the one thing that I've heard from numerous people, and you can tell me if you agree with me, is I would go back in a heartbeat. I mean,
That's the,
it costs significant money to go, but I go
mhm.
back there in a heartbeat. I think about it all the time.
That's the worst thing about it, Ken.
Yeah.
I've got five more planned in my head,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to take my daughter. I can't wait to go back
Yeah.
with my husband. I want,
Well,
yes.
exactly, because you're having some of these experiences with the animals, and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, my daughter's got to see this." Or,
Mhm.
I can. I'm the same as you. I can think of my granddaughter. Wouldn't she be
Mhm.
freaking out if that lion walked by? You know,
Mhm.
and it's just amazing.
And speaking of taking children on these experiences, they are absolutely family friendly.
Yep.
Every single camp that we stayed in had a family tent, and they'll make accommodation for children. Absolutely, I do think the right age is about 8 plus,
Yes.
but we can find places for you if you have smaller children.
Well, the thing about doing 8 plus is you want the kids to be at an age where they're going to remember it and experience it because the educational value in it just can't be matched.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Christy, this has been amazing. I have thoroughly enjoyed sitting here reminiscing about my trip to Africa and listening to all the wonderful experiences that you had firsthand. It truly brings the magic of Africa to life. And as I said, it makes me want to go back. I go back in a heartbeat. If folks wanted to reach out to you about an African safari, Christy, how would they do that?
So you can always call me or send me an email at the information that you're seeing on your screen now. But the absolute best way to set up a time to talk about your safari is to use the link in the show notes. That's a link to my calendar. It's going to allow you to choose a time that works for you, when I will have a dedicated 30 minutes to an hour set aside to talk to you about exactly the type of safari experience you're looking to have.
Perfect. I'll leave that information in the show notes for those folks that might like to reach out. But as always, since I like to live vicariously through the travels of all the wonderful people I get to interview on this show, I have to know where you're off to next.
Next up, I have several cruises planned, but the most exciting thing that is on the horizon is I'm taking a group back to Africa, but for a completely different experience with AMA Waterways on their new ship on the Nile River. That's going to be next June.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, we'll have to have you back to regale us with your experience with AMA Waterways. It sounds like a really great way to see Africa as well.
Thank you, Ken.
Well, with that, Christy, I'm just going to wish you safe and happy travels on all your future cruises and adventures. And perhaps, maybe just someday, you and I'll find ourselves at one of these African safari lodges. How does that sound?
That'd be great, Ken.
Well, that's wonderful, Christy. So until next time, take care.
You too, Ken. Thanks.
Bye. And that about wraps it up for today, folks. A very special thanks to my guest, Christy Fitzharris of Wheels Up Travel and Cruise. If you'd like to reach Christy, I will leave her contact information in the description. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can simply send a question to questions@realtravelexperts.com, visit our website, realtravelexperts.com, or simply leave a comment. We always respond. And as always, folks, if you enjoyed this content, a like, subscribe, share, and a ring of the bell is certainly appreciated and helps other folks just like you to find our content. So until next time, happy travels.